I don't think they tick the box on product design. I don't think they tick the box on ecosystem. You can tell that they behave like a company who owns the market, right? They don't need to change anything that they don't have to in order to retain a customer. Last time we put them in the C tier. As somebody who has done increasingly more work in the space over the last 6 months, from an AI perspective, they're an F for me. And they're an F for me because they've got so much money and so much access to customers, and yet they choose to treat their customers with such hostility and their developers with such hostility. They can't even manage their own systems as well as other competing AI providers can. And so for AI, for me, watching them just clone features and copy and paste them into their own systems, it's a complete mess for me.
Welcome to Zero Shot, the AI podcast without all of the hype. And we're built for one reason, to be the source you actually trust when it comes to AI and business. And every week we bring you the conversations, the breakdowns, and the honest analysis that help you make better decisions in a space that is moving incredibly fast. I'm Llew Jury, the Managing Director at Avancer AI, where we build quality AI for all Australian businesses. And as always, I'm joined by the one and only Mr. James Gauci. G'day, James.
G'day, Lou, and hi to everybody out there. Big welcome to anybody joining for the first time as well. Great to have you with us. I'm James Gauci, the CEO of Cadent, and we build and govern AI for high-risk sectors. Me and Lou are a couple of people who live in this industry every single day. We know that the noise is absolutely deafening, and the good news is we're all in this together. We're all going through it. There's no way over. There's no way under. We have to go through, you know? So that's exactly why we built Zero Shots for everyone out there looking for a steady hand in the AI revolution, isn't it?
It is, mate. And back at the start of the year, in one of our earliest episodes, we did our AI tier list, which was one of my favorites, James. I don't know about you, mate.
I had a great time.
It was awesome, wasn't it? And it was all about who was winning, who was falling behind, and who had the staying power. And we promised we'd revisit it halfway through the year. And here we are. And honestly, the timing could not be better, right? Because, the chess pieces on the board have generally been moved and turned upside down and things like that. And, everybody's been hearing about this, and, what you've heard, that one is doing something and another's doing the other thing. Because today we're going to do the whole thing fresh. We're going to take a current snapshot. We're going to look at it from scratch. And our goal by the end of this awesome episode 28 is to basically give you, not to tell you and lecture you on who's on top and make you go out and buy the shiny tool. That's not our way that we do it. We want to hand you a way to look at any AI company and know instantly whether it's right for you and for your business.
That's right. And there are a couple of kind of key moves we're going to make today. So firstly, we'll have a talk through a few different ways of considering each of these organizations, courtesy of Lou. He wants to kind of pull things apart from particular perspectives, like the enterprise perspective, the consumer perspective, etc. So that'll be our interesting kind of first section. And then we'll move into the tier list itself. There are so many ways to slice and dice all of these providers, and each is valuable and useful in their own way. So it'll be interesting to see how we stack rank them in the end. And finally, how do we actually pick? So me and Lou will have a talk about some of the models that we use day to day and why we use them, and some of the things that we're recommending to our customers at the moment. So let's get into it, Lou.
Yeah, and before we do, let's give a big thanks to Cowboy.ai, our sponsor of this episode. And here's something worth remembering. No matter which model tops your list from today, you only get it best when it's actually briefed in properly. And Prompt Cowboy is the tool to help you do a precise, structured prompt before you put it to work, and use the agent setting like we both use, James and I, in the chat window. And whichever model you pick today from this episode 28, it's how you're going to get the most out of it. So head on over to promptcowboy.ai. James, news of the week or tool of the week. What is happening in your world?
Look, before we dive into what is ultimately going to be a US and Chinese dominated conversation today, I just want to kind of give a quick shout out to some of the alternative model providers out there in other geographies, because it's easy to forget that they do exist, and they're doing some really, really genuinely innovative work. Like, we've got Mistral in France, obviously fallen off the kind of frontier pace recently, but certainly were some of the pioneers of some of the leading architectures that allow us to get more performance for our compute and our RAM dollar, like the mixture of experts architecture, which they pioneered. We got Cohere, which is from Canada, and now also Germany. We've got a bunch of EU kind of institutional models like Apatus. There's a huge volume of models that are being created that are multilingual, that are not just residing in the US and China. So despite the fact that those big economies have the dollars and the pockets to kind of go really hard, really fast, there's some genuinely innovative stuff happening in other geographies as well. And not to mention, there are a couple of organizations in Australia as well. There's a Matilda model which has come out, which is using, I think, 100% licensed content. Llew, is that right?
It is. Yeah, that's right. And I think they've raised a couple $100 million, and they're trying to do something to move the sovereign AI needle in Australia. And they're getting a little bit disgruntled, actually, James, because they weren't really included in the recent AI strategies that have been going on at the Prime Minister level. And there's been a few news articles bubbling around that they were, and there's another one as well. I forgot the name of the second one, but basically they haven't been really included yet.
Props to them for respecting copyright, though. That's a huge.
Absolutely.
Huge stance to take, and I think an Australian way of doing things, personally.
I agree. And look, I think they're going to get some funding. They'll probably get something in the region of $500 million, I reckon, in the future. And that will be game changing for sovereign AI. We will use it. We will use it in Australia for the copyright, for the local content, things like that. So how that all plays out is very interesting. James, my sort of news/tool of the week is all around the Anthropic models, but not like we're going to talk about them today. What I've been doing is moving across a couple of Copilot Studio apps for clients. And if you remember back, Copilot Studio is the AI agent builder that's more advanced than just in Copilot, your builder that you have on the left there. And in the development community, not many people use it. And sort of it's more, baked into enterprises trying to move the needle. The problem is you've only got about 8,000 characters to put into the window of context to actually give it some instruction. Anyway, cut a long story short, for a client, we've been moving over. They're on Claude now, this client, and we've moved them over off Copilot onto a brand new, fresh Opus 4.8 powered finance agent. And I did some testing last night at the beta level. And basically what's happened is the skills that we've baked in and allowing the client to actually set and create their own skills, just like you would inside Claude, in their own agents that we're custom building for them, are actually producing, with the Opus 4.8, incredible results. So compared to Copilot and what we had to sort of really hard code into the context window of that particular AI agent, the financial controller emailed me last night and said, look, those two reports and those two skills that I've been sort of talking to you about that we expected to have to hard code in even into the lakehouse, actually are working perfectly with a great model and a really lean front end. And I've been tracking the costs through the Anthropic console because we've got a feed actually into the agent to show us how much each search or each day is costing. Brilliant. So we're getting this convergence, James, of wonderful models out there in the API world that are allowing us to connect into things and all the connectors that go on, and also these wonderful models that basically are so smart now. And just a little heads up, we'll talk about it today, but, not just Fable, but Opus 5 came out and it's cheaper and more, it's way smarter. So look, that's a bit of news from me. If you are moving across from Copilot to Claude agents, feel free to reach out to James or I. We can help you through the journey. Awesome. So let's get into our first segment, James. This is about winning, the 3 ways to winning and who's out in front and in what area. And we're sort of talking about clusters here, aren't we? We're talking about sort of the tools and things like that. Do you want to get into it for us and set the scene, around the tools first, and what are the 3 different sort of ways an AI company can actually win out there, and why does confusing them make businesses pick wrong? And this is going back to that Copilot sort of sentiment that I just talked about.
Yeah, look, there are kind of 3 dimensions that we were talking about before this episode, Llew, where there's, what's the winning enterprise? Like, what's winning from a business perspective? Who's winning distribution? Kind of who's getting in front of as many people as they possibly can and actually getting out there and making the sales, but who's winning the consumer as well? Like, who's winning people at the personal level, where they're just using AI in their day-to-day lives. And what we kind of came up with were there were 3 kind of head and shoulders standouts in each of these areas, Llew. Do you want to talk us through the winning AI shop from the enterprise perspective?
Yeah, and it's a real sort of headline shift, and let's use the word dark horse, because if we could start to see the early seeds back in February of this year, but now we firmly understand that Anthropic and Claude has won in the last 6 months that enterprise piece. And, ChatGPT and OpenAI really had to scramble to reinvent themselves pretty much to try and catch them. But I actually think they lead the enterprise adoption and spend. They've overtaken OpenAI amongst pretty much, all businesses that we see. So I'd say 9 out of 10 companies from an enterprise level that come to us are sort of moving across to Claude, and their coders and their developers are already over on, Claude Code and things like that. And that's reflected in their valuation as well. So their valuation in that last 6 months since they've sort of really locked in winning of the enterprise has now seen them go beyond OpenAI for the first time. So what it means to the listener, of course, is if your work is serious analysis, that coding, that legal, that finance, what I was just talking about, anything with real stakes and sensitive data, although it is expensive, and we're going to talk about open weight in a sec, but this is the enterprise model built for you. So, James, what about you? What are you seeing in terms of that enterprise play, the government side, the large, universities you partner with, things like that?
Yeah, look, the Anthropic conversation is a good one because they're definitely the most dynamic mover in the AI market at the moment. They're the first mover at the moment. I think it's fair to say. And it all stems back to the day that they said no to the Trump administration. I think that was a moment in the AI industry where one of the leading providers said, well, this is our tool and we don't want you to use it for autonomous weapon systems, for example. And that kind of was a signal to the market that, hey, we're not going to be pushed around. So the fact that the other AI shops kind of rushed in and begged the government to then take their tools, and we don't care if you kill people with our models, and not to kind of, that might be a bit blunt, but it's serious, right?
It is serious.
That kind of showed me, just opinion section, that, Anthropic, they know that they're onto something. And if I had to do a little bit of technical analysis, I think the game that they played where they prioritized the harness for quite a while has meant they've gotten far better data than their competitors from actual users. And they have taught their users how to use their models, and their models are, through the harness, teaching the users how to use the models. It's a really interesting play, and they're certainly on a bit of a recursive continuous improvement at the moment with the way that their business is going. So yeah, definitely winning enterprise for me.
Yeah, awesome. And James, into distribution now, of course, and there's a clear winner that's really built market share from sort of single digits into the double digits very quickly. And it's not a surprise, is it? We did call this back, and if listeners go back to our episodes right at the start of the year, we were talking about Google and Gemini, and you never bet against them, right? And we've got a bit of vintage on ourselves now, and we've been around the traps a bit, James, you and I. So we've seen how Google can dominate in different theaters. And, the first one was search, of course, and then Google dominated in cloud. And now, of course, they're starting to really kick in within the distribution. So, never bet against them. So they've gone from about 5 or 6% market share earlier in the year, late last year, to about 27%. So they're starting to really, the rubber's hitting the road, in this year. And they're powering Android, for example, and they've rebuilt Siri, which is, within their partnership with the iPhone, with Apple, of course. And, they're on track to be the default AI on a vast majority of the world's smartphones. So what it means, of course, if you live in the Google workspace, Gmail, Docs, and you want capability right now, you just click literally the button on the top, right, the little star, the beautiful little colored star, and you're going to get something at a low cost at a fraction. So it's already in the stack, isn't it, James? It's already baked into the whole consumer sort of and into that distribution world, which doesn't surprise us.
And Google's strategy has been a really interesting one. Like they took the lead in the video game when it looked like OpenAI was going to take it out. They took the lead in the image generation game when nobody was really looking at the image generation game. And they brought out 3.1 Pro at a time where kind of OpenAI and Anthropic had both kind of seemingly taken their foot off the gas. I'm sure they hadn't internally, but they appeared to reach a point of diminishment in their model capabilities, and 3.1 Pro was my go-to for some time. So yeah, they're playing deliberate catch up. I think they're just finding the places where they can make an impact and make a splash without having to lead on all fronts or lead the frontier LLM game. either, which is, it's really impressive to see. And again, another organization with the pockets to do it.
Yeah, deep pockets. And I've been listening to a few other things about how they're funding all this, and Meta and Google and that are using private money, private capital to actually, fund their debt, for example.
Cash negative for the first time in a decade or something for
Right.
Google, which is just wild. Yeah.
It is wild. It is wild, but they always win. They always find a way to win, Google, and they will be coming for that enterprise space. Don't you worry. They will have a strategy. One of the little giveaways I've seen, and that they're starting to go into that agentic world, and something that we always used to talk about at Reload Media, which is my previous company I founded, was never build a product that Google can just take you out overnight. Craig and I used to talk about it all the time. Never build something that Google could do. Now, for the first time, I don't know whether listeners have seen, you can actually go at the top and actually build a voice AI solution in Google. And they've been advertising it across the ribbon at the top there. And that's very interesting that they're actually into that productized world about, hey, you want some voice AI? Just click this. Now, of course, Google style, you can't click a button and activate it. You've actually got to upgrade to the next tier. So, beautiful distribution. And that's why they're a winner, aren't they?
Very, very clever. And for anybody working in sensitive sectors, I've had a look and there's no guarantee that data is going to stay in the country. So just be aware of that if you're handling sensitive information over the phone.
And what about consumers, James? Where are we up to in July 2026 with winning of consumers?
Look, it's really hard to ignore the market penetration of the consumer market that OpenAI has been able to achieve with ChatGPT. They certainly seized the first mover advantage there. When Google kind of really rose to prominence and people would say, Google it rather than search it on the web or whatever. People say, I just use chat and blah, blah, blah. And I know what they're talking about. It's not WhatsApp or Messenger or SMS or something. It's Chat GPT. And so when you talk to business people out there about what they're using in their personal lives, usually it's Chat GPT, which is really, really interesting to me. The reality is that it is probably the most cohesive, consumer-facing, tries to be everything to everyone kind of application. And I think that's worked for them to retain their customer base for the most part. But yeah, people are certainly nipping at their heels, aren't they, Llew?
They are, James. And I think the 1 billion weekly active users they've got, now not all of those are paid, is the giveaway to why we've put them as the winning of the consumer market. However, I saw a statement the other day, James, the throne has wobbled for the first time. The throne is wobbling. And, they might be unbeatable for general day-to-day, but, with business, you actually have to go to 2 tiers above what you normally do for $30 a month. And that's that enterprise sort of level. I've got a client, they've got about 140 staff, and they chose ChatGPT Enterprise, and they're loving it. It's absolutely fine for them because it's approachable. Their team, which are generally trades and things like that, know how to use it because of that consumer interface. You've got skills when you get into that level. But if you come down the food chain, the general user who's just basically not paying per month and just wants a question and answer about something to do with their bridge club or, their card game or whatever it might be, then it's absolutely fine, isn't it? And let's not rock the boat here. However, it does raise a question about compute, data centers, how they're going to pay for all of this. If you've got a lot of free users out of your weekly active users, there's going to be an inflection point where ChatGPT really needs to monetize that consumer base.
Well, Llew, I think it's time. It's time to get into the tier list.
Let's do it.
And let's start with our S tier from last session that we had in February. Let's start with Anthropic. Anthropic, we've kind of considered them a surprise in the S tier around that time. Where are you putting them this time around, Llew?
Firmly in the SSSS tier. They're so far beyond because I think you hit the nail on the head a few minutes ago. The agent harness. What they've done is really captured the agent harness for the general punter that actually allows anybody in both work or play to actually get in there and actually build something of value and of substance using co-work and even people building in terminal with Claude code. So that harness that allows you not just to do chat and things like that, Anthropic have really nailed that. And in parallel, they've actually really doubled down on the coding community, the developer community, and they were the first ones before ChatGPT or OpenAI's Codex to really nail the coding world and actually do it in a way with their early Opus models that basically transformed how the coders work. Now, the coders and the developers who power the engine room, if you like, of most organizations in terms of the IT systems and the platforms and the apps that we all use, have gone to their C-suite and gone, you know what, we need Anthropic. And they did that 12 to 18 months ago. And it's been this slow burn that then the C-suite are now using it at the agent harness level. And if you have the serendipity of both of them, that is why they're an S tier. And firmly my leader in terms of the frontier models. James, what about you? I've just laid it on the table.
Oh, look, it's S tier for me. AMD's investing $5 billion of chips into Anthropic. That's led to massive share spikes for AMD as a chip manufacturer that competes with Nvidia. There's Fable 5 came out, then wasn't come out, and then came out again. But now we've got Opus 5. And for agentic coding tasks, for example, Opus 5 is actually, on the benchmarks at least, better performing than Fable 5 is. So yeah, just from strength to strength. And they're acting like a company that's about to IPO, and it's well known in the industry that that's what they intend on doing very soon. And it's going to be a mega listing. It's going to be, I'd be surprised if it's under $1 trillion valuation by the end of the year for sure.
I think, their valuation is going to really challenge SpaceX, and SpaceX recently have, as of the time of this recording, have really dropped in terms of their sort of share price and things like that.
But their earnings call revealed that the emperor had fewer clothes on than maybe they suspected.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think Anthropic are going to continue to win into the back half of this year. What about you, James? Do you think they're going to continue to grow? Are they going to be challenged? Off that S tier level, what's going to happen in the next 6 months? If you get,
I think they're going to really be challenged. I don't think OpenAI is going to take it lying down. They're going to fight dirty to kind of try and regain the ascendancy. But I don't think they're going to do it. I think that Anthropic's got 2026 stitched up. That's my prediction.
Same. Agree with you. Yeah. What's next?
Next up, our other S tier from last session, Google. Google has since that time released Gemma 4, which is widely regarded as a leading smaller language model that's open weight. And they've recently, in the last kind of 4 weeks, released their Gemma Flash updates, which are their fast kind of workhorse models. And they've improved their capabilities quite dramatically, especially for agentic long-running tasks, as is the trend at the moment. Where are you putting them on the list, Llew?
Look, I think we had them. I wanted them last time, didn't I? Remind me. I wanted them up at an S level, and we came to a conclusion that they were an A tier.
I thought we put them on S.
Did we put them up on S, did we?
Yeah, I think we did. I think we convinced each other that S was where they sat.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say they're an A tier. I think give it 6 months, give it 3 months, give it 3 months to 6 months to see if they hit that S again. Mm-hmm. But my call is that it's about market penetration. Now, I reckon they'll get there. They'll go to an S level. Never, as we just said before, never underestimate Google, what they do. You've got to back them in. They've got the cash. They've got the connections. They've got the brains. They will win eventually within segments that we all play in. And we're already starting to see that. But at the moment, I can only have one S currently. We've only got into 2 models, but...
we better hurry up. Yenny is looking at us like, oh, look at the watch.
Yeah, wow. So I'm going to put them as an A. James, where are they for you?
Yeah, they're an A for me as well. They've dropped off the pace recently. They rested on their laurels again, like appears to be their strategy. It happened with 2.5 Pro. It's happened again with 3.1 Pro. They've just kind of sat back and let the kids fight it out. And I think they'll come back pretty strong. And generally what we're seeing is similar to the way that Anthropic runs their model rollouts. Sonnet 5 came shortly after Fable 5, and then Opus 5 came. I think a similar thing's going to happen with Google. They're gearing up for their next Pro release. And I think that'll give the smaller players a little bit to worry about.
Agree. And it will really really test the benchmarks, won't it, of coding and, recall and the body of knowledge of society.
They've been context leaders for a very long time. They were the first ones to 1 million token context, which is the working memory of any given model that you're using. So expect more advancement in that space for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so next, James, let's dive into the big one we've been talking about, OpenAI and, ChatGPT and 5.6 Sol and, all of that. Where do they sit for you?
Yeah, I argued him down from an S. You wanted him in an S, and I put him in an A, and I wouldn't budge.
Well done. Yeah.
I mean, what I said at the time was they had a big talent exodus, and I think that's impacted them quite significantly. However, they've recently made a bit of a comeback. They made a couple of acquisitions, as I recall, but they've really, amidst all the financial uncertainty, they've started to perform better on the benchmarks again, which is good for them and good for their users. So for me, still an A, but still a watch this space. How about you, Llew?
This is a good one. This is why I love doing this. So as of 2 weeks ago, they were a B+. Now, I'm going to tell you why. They became a B- about 2 months ago. And they became a B- because they missed the boat on enterprise. They got Sora and they had to rebuild it into, ChatGPT Images 2.0, which is actually really good. It's the one that I recommend to everybody. ChatGPT Images, go and have a look at that and pay the $30 a month if you're producing a lot of images. Now, that's why they're a B-. They went to a B+ when they were at a B+ because the new models were coming out. And then I tested, as I've been talking about, Sol, which is their top weight model, 5.6 on, you slide it now on the max setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've run a few reports that I did in Fable and Opus now 5, and they're actually really, really good. They've really trimmed their context window, how they actually approach it. It feels a lot leaner. It feels smarter. And so, look, they were a B+. They just creep into that A tier for me, But if we had done this session 2 weeks ago, I would have been jumping up and down going B+.
Yeah, and let's not forget that their latest model that's in development reportedly hacked into Hugging Face to try and change the upstream code that was managing the model and this and that and the other. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those style of headlines floating around. How much of it is marketing, we'll never know. But yeah, they're trying their hardest and good on the technical teams for getting that stuff done.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let's move on to the next one. I agree on an A, but yeah, certainly watch this space, and yeah, certainly some of the open weight models are far out, undeniable when you're looking at the performance of those compared to the likes of OpenAI. Let's move into. Do you want to stay on the US for a while, or do we want to venture into China and then come back?
No, let's stick on the US. Let's get that done, and and then we'll go to the Chinese open weights, and because they've got some good discussion points. So what's next? Nvidia, James, how are they going for you in terms of all the different things? Jensen Huang's talking about building agents. They're not talking about chips anymore. Like, what's going on there in terms of Nvidia?
Well, I mean, they're supply chain constrained. As a company, their bread and butter is chips, and they don't have enough chips to bring out new and better hardware. It's a completely supply constrained market for them at the moment. So they've got to do other things to stay relevant and lead the game. So they're focusing on software right now. They're consolidating their leadership with their CUDA architecture, which for those less techie out there, that's what allows inference models to run really fast on their hardware. They've got the most mature hardware ecosystem, which is why they lead the game. On the models front, though, they're an also-ran, frankly. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to be the hardware and software and the model on top of that. They're not trying to be the user, then the product, then the harness, then the model. They're kind of coming at it from the opposite angle. So they're going for a different market to others, and that appears to be working for them. For me, they're a B. The stuff that they come out with is not innovative in the LLM space and the AI space. They're just copycatting a lot of stuff and kind of adapting it for their own hardware. So yeah, they're not pushing the envelope for me. So they're a B.
And so they're a B. I agree with you, but they're an S in terms of their share price. I mean, like aren't they the most valuable company in the world? I mean, I think, Nvidia is actually, their share price has gone absolutely crazy. Now, whether that's sustainable, whether that's something long term, whether there's a reckoning coming, like some punters want to sort of talk about. But I think my concern here about them is about the diversification and off-product strategy in terms of getting confused about who they are. And I actually think I agree with you about the sentiment about they're trying to be all things to everyone. And that's never good. You've got to really focus in and be really, execute on what you're really good at. And I think NVIDIA in the last 6 months have been a bit confused about their brand strategy and where they're going. And maybe it's because they've got such deep pockets, they can have a dabble in all these different product areas. and get out there. But when I was in Singapore at Super AI last month in June, Nvidia weren't really prominent. The big ones as you walk in, of course, were Google and their GCP and their cloud, and then Alibaba with Qwen, and then a couple of other players that sort of were smaller. But yeah, Nvidia weren't there. They weren't actually sort of saying, "Hey, come and engage with us." And this is 10,000 business leaders from across Asia and Australia coming together to talk about AI. And you would have thought that they would have been there, but
they just don't care, mate. I think like if you have a look at, go to umart.com.au or scorptech.com.au and go and have a look at the price of a workstation graphics card, it'll blow your socks off.
Yeah.
You could buy a couple of used cars for the same price. So, there's a reason why they're not doing much that's interesting. It's because they're another one with the market stitched up. They're probably the one at the moment with the market stitched up. And until the RAM supply starts flowing again, which by everything I can gather is going to be late 27, early 28, they won't have to do anything because they're just making money for jam. Right?
Yeah. So a solid B for Nvidia, and we'll see what happens. Let's get on to AWS, James.
AWS.
You're close to AWS. What's your take, and where do they sit? Where did we have them last time?
We had them in D last time, and I don't see any significant reason to pull them out of D personally.
Poor AWS.
They've positioned themselves interestingly, and I think like. They're trying to be the Amazon of AI, which shouldn't be surprising to any of us. You know, they're using other people's models and other people's. Oh, well, they've got their own hardware. Some it's behind the pace, but they're buying other people's hardware. They're putting it in big warehouses and they're selling that as a service. And so, for me, the innovation isn't huge. It's not a massive part of their overall balance sheet as Amazon, but they are still the biggest cloud services company, hyperscaler in the world. So for that alone, that stops them from dropping down to an F for me. The raw capability and the raw compute power that they have access to will keep them relevant, and until such a time as they strategically must start to lead in AI products, I don't think that they will, and I don't think they need to. Just a quick comment on their Nova models. You know, they're pretty good for certain tasks. They're very cheap. They optimize for their own hardware, which is why they're so cheap. And so for certain jobs, 100%, like use them. Small tasks, text summarization. If you're an AWS house, so to speak, then yes, absolutely use them. And Bedrock is great. We use Bedrock every day. So for that reason, I can't, on an AI list, I can't put them beyond a D. How about you, Lou?
Yeah, because of the Bedrock and because of the approachability of it, even though you need to be a genius to work out how to set up S3 buckets and like all of that, they still haven't fixed their UI. Like
it's been overhauled recently. What you're seeing now is like overhauled about a year ago.
Having to search on S3 and how do I set up a user and anyway, man, it was tough. Anyway, they're a C. They're a C for me because of the approachability, and I think they're going to get better and better. And Bedrock, absolutely, I agree with you. However, I actually think it's very approachable for the developer community that have been on them for that 10 to 15 years. They're the ones that started with the credits, and we talked about that before. So, I actually think the approachability and the familiarity for the development community, AWS is sort of a clear, solid C. There's a lot of they're definitely not a winner, and they're not coming out with some of the GCP and BigQuery sort of stuff on top with the power from Google, but they still are very solid, and that's why I give them a C, but they've got some improvement. So, yeah.
Just
awesome.
Before we move on from AWS, it's worth mentioning that they too have had a recent talent exodus. They've cut a lot of people in their AGI team, their artificial general intelligence team. So that's the team that produces the Nova models. So I don't see AWS moving out of the doldrums of the D tier in the near future.
Awesome. I like we can now. There's a disagreement, which is awesome. C and D. So there's still a pass there, isn't a D a pass?
Would you like? I'm happy to put them in C if you'd like to.
No. Let's not compromise. Let's leave it a split on the screen when Yenia puts up the scores. Look,
D/C.
Yeah, controversy.
C for controversy. Yeah,
yeah, C for controversy. James, over to Microsoft. What's happening in the Microsoft world? Where are they up to? What's happening with their models? They're trying to build their own bit of kit because they've been piggybacking off OpenAI and Anthropic. And what's happening? I heard about DeepSeek. They're even testing DeepSeek.
Listen, I'm not known for my advocacy of Microsoft. I don't think they tick the box on product design. I don't think they tick the box on ecosystem. I can tell that they behave like a company who owns the market, right? They don't need to change anything that they don't have to in order to retain a customer. Last time we put them in the C tier, as somebody who has done increasingly more work in the Microsoft space over the last 6 months and with a history of doing quite a bit of Microsoft work in the past. From an AI perspective, Microsoft has completely dropped off. They're an F for me. And they're an F for me because they've got so much money and so much access to customers, and yet they choose to treat their customers with such hostility and their developers with such hostility. And case in point, I was trying to put together a test environment for some training that we're doing in Copilot and Copilot Studio and so on. And I tried to use Microsoft's tools to do it, and I couldn't do it, even though I was following all of the instructions. I used Claude's tools to do it, and I got all the access I needed within 15 minutes, and I set up the entire environment programmatically. That's where Microsoft is at. They can't even manage their own systems as well as other competing AI providers can. And so for AI, for me, watching them just clone features and copy and paste them into their own systems and call everything Copilot, and then nothing is Copilot, but everything's Copilot. It's a complete mess for me. And that's a really bad review. And I'm really sorry to all of my friends who are Microsoft developers and certified and architects and things. There are some wonderful people who work at Microsoft. And there are wonderful people who work at MSPs. This is not directed at you. I care so deeply for your developer experience and your customer experience that I have to give Microsoft an F. They're too rich to behave like this personally. Llew, what do you think?
Yeah, look, it's a big call, isn't it? And they certainly own the business space. They own the business and enterprise space, of course, through their old Active Directory and the access that we've all got, the authentication and the login screen. They own that, right? So, they own 365, but there's more disgruntlement than I've ever heard from people, especially around MSPs, managed service providers, that are having to, juggle this whole world of AI and set it up for their clients and open up certain things. I mean, yeah, there is some problems with their admin and their Entra, it's called, and setting it up. And, don't change your phone, by the way, James, and to listeners, don't change over to a new iPhone or whatever and get rid of your 2FA. It will take you weeks to actually go through that. So anyway, we're off AI already. But look,
AI, Llew, come on.
I think we train people in Copilot because they have to use it under the auspices of sovereign protection. Now, it's not sovereign data protection, but it's sovereign protection locked down to their environment because they're a government agency or they're a university or, and so I do say to them, the experience I'm giving you today is not going to be the same experience that if we actually were doing this in Claude or even ChatGPT to an extent. So, the Copilot user kind of knows that. The agents that you build for them have all the same structures, and, we work on our RCTF and the context windows and things like that. But the power is very one-dimensional. So the AI experience to the user is the thing that I really feel for them. And I like how we've broken this up. I'm sort of feel for the user and you're feeling for the developer community. And I think that's a very good read on, where they're at the moment. Now,
then you have to wonder who it is they're actually serving and who they're trying to appease in this scenario, because it's certainly not either of those parties.
Well, I've got a client at the moment. It's a fairly big organization. They want to use Dynamics 365. They want to use all this Dynamics sort of stuff underneath the hood, right? ERP, CRM, the whole lot. And I have to go back to them and say, we're not a Microsoft shop that actually wants to touch any of that. Give us the feed, but we're going to build on top using Claude agents. And if you don't want to do that, you're not going to solve the problem that you're trying to solve if we are constrained to using Copilot Studio. So they're not winning in AI. They're an E for me, not an F. I'm going to give them an E, but they need to improve. They need to bring in a DeepSeek. They need to shake themselves up. They need to do something different. So we've got another split there, but it's fairly harsh, isn't it?
Maybe we can let's kind of inflect upwards if we can.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the leading Chinese AI shops, and let's start with one that is widely considered the big dog over in China, and that's Alibaba's Qwen, Llew.
Yeah, it's huge. And it goes to the top of my rankings. It's my go-to. I've been working with Raf, one of my guys, in the last few days about where we go on our open weight and sort of the Chinese model journey. And we've been having a good look at them because everybody's using Anthropic and the credits are mounting and, the tokens are churning. So we're looking at 3.7 in a big way. And we're looking at Qwen, which is owned by and built by Alibaba, one of the biggest e-com marketplaces in the world.
They're like the Amazon of China, are they?
They're the Amazon of China, but they do more than just e-commerce shopping. They run every life and, experience and taxi and the whole thing, every transaction pretty much. So again, a bit like a Google in, Google's banned, of course, in China. They are my winner in terms of being an S class for this tiering. And I think that they are one that basically from a coding level and developer level, but also from an approachable level, because you can actually now spin things up on their own infrastructure, not having to go and get Nvidia chips. You can actually build it on top of their infrastructure. And that's what was actually in Singapore. They were actually selling the infrastructure and saying, hey, just rent, per hour, per minute, per day, per second. We'll bring the infrastructure. Just use our models on top. You don't need to put it on your own server like behind James there. So what about you, James? Where do they sit for you, Qwen 3.7?
So last time we had them in a C, would you believe?
Wow.
And
wow. Okay, there you go.
Qwen, for me, I think they're an interesting case. They've become increasingly interesting for me because they have started to close their frontier models off. So the 3.7 Max, which is their latest frontier class model, is behind closed doors. You cannot download the weights of that model. And that's the first time that Qwen's done that. So for me, that, like, as somebody who's really interested in running AI on their own infrastructure and having full control over the software, that's a mark off for me. But I say that as somebody who has a business that runs Qwen's smaller language models on our own infrastructure every single day for the majority of our tasks. And so I can't fault them from that perspective. What they've been able to provide in terms of choice for businesses and just everyday people across different types of hardware, they basically dominated the self-hosting space, because they've got flavors of models that suit all sorts of different hardware combinations, whether you're running it on a GPU that has limited RAM or you're running it across multiple GPUs and using a little bit of RAM in each of the GPUs in a mixture of experts model, or whether you've just got a massive kind of GPU cluster and you want to run the latest and greatest kind of 300 billion, 500 billion parameter model. They're a B for me right now, given that they're closing off their best models, the weights of their best models. For me personally, the value starts to diminish. They're kind of like China's Google right now. They've got some really capable, smaller, large language models and multimodal models, and then they've got their closed proprietary stuff that they'll always keep behind the gate. But yeah, B tier for me.
Yeah, awesome. And look, I think, it's a hard one, isn't it, to put a flag on the hill. I'm going to do the next one, and then I'm going to decide which one's mine. So Moonshot, Kimmy K3 has come out. Now, did you download it yesterday? Didn't it go open weight yesterday, James?
I'll look it up now while you're talking.
I think, so Kimmy K, for all the listeners, Moonshot, which is really, the dark horse in the last 3 weeks. But we've known about this before. They've done this before. They've sort of replaced DeepSeek in the last 6 to 12 months. And they're going from strength to strength. And basically, they are an incredible bit of kit in terms of the power and compute you get from them. And
yep, you can download the weights right now on Hugging Face. So yes,
there you go.
They kept their promise. Good on them.
I think it was the 27th, wasn't it? So absolutely, you can download now Kimmy K3. Really, really cool. And I think that's going to be a game changer against the Qwen. To James's point, if they're not opening up at Qwen and they're not giving you, those truly large models, then Kimmy K is going to come through and do a Stephen Bradbury sort of thing, and
and Kimmy Moonshot and Kimmy K3, like they were an overnight success that was a couple of years in the making, kind of thing. Like they've been kind of in that middle pack of Chinese model providers for quite some time. And when K3 came out, it was immediately in the wake of Fable 5, and it was Fable 5 class reasoning.
Yeah.
In an open weight model. And that's what has scared the absolute bejesus out of the Yanks. They're seeing this freely available model with similar performance to the leading model that their country's ever produced. And they're going, oh, maybe we're not in the lead as much as we thought that we were. And certainly, I think the fears are corporate fear. These are just risks to their bottom line and all that kind of thing. But yeah, the reality is for businesses, we have an exceptional model that we can run on our own hardware, provided we can fund our own hardware to run it, because you need about $100,000 worth of hardware to run the blooming thing. Yeah, and we can keep that in our own server farm or our own little kind of server rack. It's really, really impressive, and it's amazing capability to make available for the people who can run it. Yeah.
A hot tip there is go to Kimmy K or Moonshot and just through the web browser, they're giving it a web experience similar to ChatGPT, and you can actually go and play with it and have a look at it and give it, a question and answer and a chat. And it actually is really close, isn't it? It's really close to a Claude mixed with a bit of a chat experience.
Where do you want to tier them, Lou?
So, look, I'm going to put Moonshot above Qwen. I just think in the last 3 weeks, they've really impressed me in what they've done for the industry. I'm going to put them as an A. I'm going to throw Moonshot into an A, and I'm going to put Qwen as a B. I agree with you on that one, but I want one to become an S. I do want one to become an S.
Let's move on to ZAI GLM 5.2. Have you had much experience with this one, Lou?
Not at all. Little bit, within the old llama worlds and things like that, but it's not a real big focus for us. What about you, James? Like, where do you sit?
Look, we haven't used it a lot internally, but it's widely known. GLM 5.2, which is Z.AI's kind of best model available right now, open weight, but also consumable through their web interface. As you'd imagine, you can deploy it anywhere. It's kind of Opus 4.8 class. So before K3 came out, the one that those in the open weight LLM community were talking about was largely GLM 5.2. And yeah, it's exceptional. I'll put them in B.
Agree. Let's do it.
And it's mainly because they are now, they along with Kimmy K3 are kind of taking the mantle of insanely capable high-end LLMs that you can still run on your own hardware with permissive licensing. So for that reason, they're a B for me.
Yeah, same. And what about DeepSeek, James? Where are they sitting these days? I mean, I haven't even thought about DeepSeek for months. I don't know about you.
I remember back in the day when all the law firms were like, oh, amazing, we've got DeepSeek now, we can put it on our own hardware, and it's a frontier class model and so on. And they established a really big foothold in the sensitive and high stakes kind of AI space a couple of years ago when they came out. But they've kind of been quietly consequential over the last kind of 12 months. They recently brought out their V4 models, which cost per task are incredibly capable and cheap. They have great agentic capability at the moment, stronger maths and code generation than previous generations, that historically leading in reasoning and language, but not so much in maths and coding. But yeah, they've got a really interesting business model at the moment with on-peak and off-peak pricing and stuff. So, but still all open weight models, the majority of them at least. So definitely check them out if you're interested in running models that give you great cost per task on your own hardware, Lou. I'll put them in a. I don't think I have a C yet. They're a B for me as well. I think I'm struggling to put them below a B at the moment.
Let's do B. Sounds good. And the final one, Minimax M3. Where do they sit? Are you using Minimax?
Yeah. So Minimax was another one of those kind of Sonnet / Opus, between Sonnet and Opus kind of capabilities, the M3 model, which you can run on your own hardware as well. I'm going to put them in a C tier, mainly because they haven't made a release that makes them relevant against GLM and Kimmy and Qwen recently. But of course, they could jump up the rankings again at any time, probably with their next release. They're not a massive lab, but they certainly punch above their weight, and a good one to explore as an alternative model in that open weight space. So C tier for me.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. we'll do a summary, of course, of all of what we just talked about. Yenny will no doubt bag that into the episode comments.
And just a comment on the ones that didn't make the cut this time around. Apple placed bottom last time, and they didn't even appear in our list this time.
Didn't appear in the list.
They're not even making a strong push into the large language model space anymore because they've decided they're going to license other people's models.
Yeah, but never write them off either. The Googles and the Apples, bucket loads of cash. They've been sitting back watching everything else happen. Yeah. Could they do the true Stephen Bradbury and go? I
reckon my hot tip is watch Apple for the self-hosted AI game. Because they've been quietly leading self-hosted AI hardware at high levels of intelligence for a long time with their unified memory architecture. I think that if they're going to make a play, it'll be in that space, and it'll be once the RAM prices come down again. So I think they've just given up on this cycle, but they'll come back bigger and better than ever, as you can imagine. They always do, don't they?
They do, James. I agree. And let's move into closing out the third segment and how to choose. Without chasing the leaderboard. We've just given you the tiers. We've just given you the leaderboard. But there is expense. There's things to consider, the winners and the headlines and things like that. What we didn't talk about there was the token cost, and how much it actually costs to run Fable. And we gave it an S tier for Anthropic's Claude. But, there is expense there. And, it's sort of becoming the haves and the have-nots on how we actually then do the rankings. But talk us through. Let's bring this home, James, in terms of, how do people disseminate this? How do they, I suppose, it's going to look different in 6 months. What does a business do right now to make a decision about which one they pick? And is this something that you do for 12 months, which is what I tell my clients? This is a 12-month play. Things might be very different, and we might be on a completely different model in 12 months' time. But where do we start? What how do they pick the winner?
Yeah, I'll kind of ground it in what we're doing. And what we're doing is as a software, primarily a software shop, but ultimately AI specialist consultancy, we need to not have a dependency on the US government or the leading AI studio in Anthropic turning off and on capable models. And so for us at the moment, we're going, okay, well, how much is it going to cost us to build our own frontier capable hardware stack that will last us the next 5 years, that we can keep uploading the latest models to, so that we will always have access to frontier level intelligence, regardless of what's happening geopolitically at any given time. But we're a unique case, just like every business is. And when we think about that, we're not thinking about individual model providers. We're just thinking about what's the best value for money that we can get out of our hardware or our compute. Like over time, that can make commercial sense, but in a 12-month term, that's never going to make commercial sense because you're probably spending 5, 6, maybe even sometimes, depending on the size of your business, 7 or 8 figures on hardware before you can do that kind of thing. However, having said that, my recommendation for the way to think about selecting the model providers for you and the AI providers for you is always prioritize a diversity of capabilities, because you don't want one supplier who is critical to your business performance turning off what they're offering you at any given time and not have an alternative sitting behind the scenes. And for us at the moment, that's the Qwen models that are running on our own hardware. But in the future, it'd be great to have some more capable models than the small ones that we're running to provide that backup for us on the day that Opus 5 gets revoked. So that's my tip. Diversity, plan for it to go wrong, and wherever possible, try and get your compute and inference onshore, because that will protect you as a business contractually, legally, reputationally, trust-wise. It's a really strong signal to be able to send to people. Llew, how about you?
Yeah, wise words. And mine is very similar. Mine is around, who is best is probably the wrong question to ask here, and it will cost you money. The first question is really around which of the 3 ways are going to matter in my business. There's different ways you can approach this. So if you've got serious business requirements to weigh, especially in the enterprise space and things like that, then generally it's Anthropic, although you need to watch the token costs and the model costs. If you're already inside places like the Googles of the world and things like that, then that significantly points you to Gemini and broad everyday use. If you're just sort of, maybe doing a lot of e-com or things like that, then maybe ChatGPT is for you. But generally speaking, it's about picking the one that actually matches the best model for your business and the dimensions and space that you work within what you do. And it's not about benchmarks of power, because we all don't really use the million token context every hour of every day. We don't try to do is we're trying to fit like square pegs in round holes, because we all come from different styles of business. And I think that the big thing, the headline basically is match the winner to your needs, not just the headline S tier that we might be talking about.
100%. Well, I think we just gave our key takeaways, Llew.
We did.
Next week, everyone, we're going to be talking about a timely topic considering that ranking. It's AI agents. We're going to talk about how they're interacting with business and the fact that there's some of the least understood concepts. I mean, Microsoft calls something an agent.
Is it really an agent?
Is it really an agent? And does our business call it an agent? Does that conform to our policy, etc.? So the label is somewhat confusing, but autonomy is really important. And we're not having, what we want to do is increase the maturity of the conversation that's being had around it in plain terms, what they actually are, what they can genuinely do for you, and just as importantly, what they cannot or what they maybe should not. So we touched on this a couple of episodes back and promised we'd come back to it. So next week, no hype, no jargon, just the honest picture of what an AI agent looks like in 2026 and whether your business should care yet. Don't miss it.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks again to promptcowboy.ai. Most people get average results from their prompting, and for one reason, it's because they have a vague prompt. They got no model fixes that can actually solve that for you. I mean, as we just talked about for the last hour. So if agentic prompting and getting the most from these LLMs and these frontier models that we talked about are important to you, and you want the powerful tool to actually perform, then, head on over to promptcowboy.ai for your prompting extravaganza. James.
Prompting extravaganza. It's like every training I've ever run. Thanks for joining Zero Shot. That's it for today's session, and thanks for listening, not just for coming and joining us, but for listening all the way through. Really appreciate it. That's what keeps us going.
Yeah, we built Zero Shot for something really simple. It's about the right information delivered straight to you at the right time, and how it can change an entire generation of business leaders and people that are navigating this revolution. So this is what we do every single week, and we're for the builders, the skeptics, the strategists, and everybody in between that, and who are all trying to make sense of this incredible space and who want to actually move the needle in the industries. And this is why we're here.
So here's something we really mean. If you're confused about something, anything at all, if there's a topic you can't find a straight answer on, jump into the comments section, jump into the reviews section, go and find us on LinkedIn. Just pepper us with your questions, your topics, your concepts. We want to help you understand these things better. So if you have that question, somebody else probably has it too. We'll build an episode around it. You're part of crafting what this next season is going to look like. So don't be shy, everyone.
That's it. And if today was useful for you, the best thing you can do is chuck us a follow right now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, wherever you're listening out there. It doesn't cost you anything. And this will keep the mission alive in front of more people who actually need it. So super important. Find us on LinkedIn, of course. Search on James Gauci and Llew Jury, and also the Zero Shot podcast. We're on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and every single other short form content that you can actually go and see. I love the short form stuff. It's awesome. So if you've got a busy week, get your key moments out of that. And if there's somebody in your world that's feeling a bit overwhelmed by it all, share this episode with them. That's how we grow, and this is how we help more people out there, James.
And finally, Llew, just one shout out to our amazing producer, Yenia Larotta. Thank you for everything you do. You keep the wheels greased and us two on track, so really appreciate it. Everyone, stay sharp, stay sovereign, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Cheers.